Welcome to our session on inclusive communication with a focus on autism. My name's Lucy and I'm joined by my colleague Rina. Both of us are autistic and we work as accessibility consultants at AbilityNet. So first of all, I'll just introduce myself and then I will pass over to Rina. So as I said, my name's Lucy. I've worked as an accessibility consultant at AbilityNet for about a year now, and I'm involved mainly in audits and also in usability testing. I was diagnosed as autistic when I was 40. At the same time, my son was diagnosed as a child. And this diagnosis made me understand many aspects of my life much better, and really importantly, it's allowed me to be much kinder and more understanding of myself and what I need after years of feeling as though I didn't quite fit in and wondering why some aspects of life didn't come naturally to me when they seemed to be fine for other people. And so, Rina, over to you.
Hi everyone, my name's Rina. I am an accessibility consultant at AbilityNet, just like Lucy. I was diagnosed when I was about 19. I have worked at AbilityNet for just over 4 years now. My autism diagnosis didn't come as much of a surprise. Most of my immediate family is autistic, but what it did do was help me to understand, where I might struggle a bit and kind of accept that, sometimes I might need some help because I'm a very independent person. So yeah, it's just generally been quite a positive journey for me.
Okay. So, in this talk, we're speaking from our own unique perspectives, and obviously, an individual's preferences and needs are going to vary from person to person. But we think that many of the things that we talk about in terms of barriers and inclusive communication are going to resonate with other people, whether they're autistic or not. And at the end of our session, we're going to be introducing our guest speaker, Melanie, who is going to talk about the work she's been doing at the University of Greenwich. So, so this is just our experience, but we hope it will be useful to listen to, and it will have some good information that will help improve communication between lots of different types of people. So the first thing we're going to look at is the barriers to effective communication. Some of the barriers that we encounter are due to misunderstandings about how we prefer to work. We found that if people are willing to communicate what their needs are and to ask questions and perhaps make some simple adaptations, this can have a positive impact on how we work. So different learning styles between different types of people mean that it's helpful to have concepts communicated in a range of different ways. Personally, I like visual representations of information, such as flowcharts and diagrams to accompany text or any sort of verbal instructions. I actually find verbal instructions really hard to process, and I prefer to see things written down or demonstrated. But the best way that I learn is to have the opportunity to do something myself and to get support and feedback on that. I also can find it very stressful to be put on the spot, and if I'm given time to prepare, I'll be able to communicate my ideas much better. I sometimes get distracted by errors, particularly in written things. So these are often things that could be easily checked using spell checkers or reviewing work before it's shared or before emails are sent out.
So our next session around kind of barriers is about us needing some help sometimes. So everyone will need help occasionally. But after years of insisting that I didn't need help doing anything and that I can do everything myself, I'm finally coming to terms with the fact that there are things that I need help with. So what can other people do to help us function in the world today? Sometimes we'll find that we know what we want to say, but we're not quite sure how to say it. It could be asking a question, discussing something, or even that we've asked a question, we've not got the answer that we maybe expected. Having someone who can help us with these can be really great. So, just having someone around who is open to being kind of a point of contact for anyone, not just, people with autism or dyslexia or anything like that. Just having someone around who can be a point of contact for this stuff where people can go and say, I need to say this, but I'm not quite sure how to say it, can be really, really useful. So the next point here is about helping us to understand what is being said. As Lucy was saying, having written communication can be really useful because we can refer back to it, we can take our time to process it and understand it. But it's also harder to understand if it's been written in an unclear way or if it has spelling or grammar errors. So just be aware, make sure that things are written down so people can refer to them, but also make sure that when it is written down, it's written down clearly and it's free of errors.
Okay, so the next section we've called Ask Us. It's really trying to say that lots of communication barriers can be mitigated by simply asking me about my preferences or dislikes. Some people are unsure about what language to use around differences or disabilities. They might think that people might be offended or they might use the wrong words, but it's really the best thing to do is just ask the individuals what they prefer. It's been super helpful for me to be able to voice my communication preferences at work so that I'm confident in knowing how best to contact people. And I also feel that this has helped give my colleagues a better understanding of me and how I like to work. I particularly appreciated being asked to give feedback to ideas or comments, as this makes me feel and have confidence that my opinion is valid and that it's okay to ask if I want something to be made clearer or clarified.
So now that we've shared some of the barriers that we've experienced, we also wanted to look at some quick tips on how to make communication clearer for everyone. So to start off, tip number one is about being direct. This works both ways. Having people being direct and clear when they communicate can help to avoid misunderstandings and helps everyone to know what is happening. So make sure that questions are specific. So, for example, avoid things like, tell me about yourself. What about me do you want to know? My name, my address, personality, skills, and so on. Define clear actions and tasks. So, who needs to do what and when does it need to be done by? Where can people go for more information? But equally, we tend to be quite direct in the way that we communicate. We can often forget what I like to call the social niceties. So the how are you? I hope you had a good holiday, those sorts of things. Try not to be put off by this. It's just the way our brains work.
Okay, so tip two is about considering literalism. So we don't often or search for hidden meanings behind people's words and actions, and we can often take words at face value. And also, we ourselves often speak literally. For example, just thinking of a recent example, if someone says to you, have you got any questions? That will really literally mean that Any questions are fair game. So if you've got any questions, we're as likely to answer. Have you got any chocolate biscuits as we are to ask a question about the particular piece of work that we're studying? It's still a question. It's still completely valid. The second one is about avoiding sarcasm, idioms, and figurative language, as these can sometimes be misinterpreted by us. I can find these really distracting, as it makes me build up weird images in my head when people use figurative language. For example, if someone says, sort of, hang on a minute, in my brain, I just get a picture of somebody sort of hanging on to one of those things on the tube so they don't fall over, and that can sort of send me down a whole wormhole of pictures and images and experiences. I understand figurative language and I'm perfectly able to read fiction with figurative language in, but that doesn't stop me being distracted and picturing everything in my head in a visual way.
So our third tip is about defining things clearly. So make sure that all of the rules in a workplace or a situation are written down as best you can. Things like the dress code, not just what it is, but also what that means. You know, if it's smart casual, what does that mean in your workplace? What rules do you have around taking breaks, for example? Can you choose when to take lunch, or will someone tell you when you have to have it? Also, clearly define your processes. So, can colleagues look for a free space in your diary, or do they need to check with you before booking a meeting? How do people book their holidays? Do they need to make any checks first, or can they just request it in a system? All of these will help a wide range of people, including people like us, who may not pick up on the unwritten rules. You know, maybe someone is new to the workforce, having just left school or university. Maybe they're from a different culture where the unwritten rules are different. All of this can help different people in different ways, but it's all really useful in helping to communicate more clearly.
And tip 4 is closely linked to what Rina's just said. So one of the things we've got here is to respect preferences around communication and calls. So that's things like making sure people know that they can have their camera on and off on video calls. Let people know if you like to be contacted or whether you're okay to take ad hoc calls. Check people's calendar before booking meetings so things don't come as a surprise out of the blue. And have a conversation about online statuses and respect the online statuses that people use. For example, if somebody says do not be disturbed, does that mean do not be disturbed unless there's an emergency, or do not be disturbed unless it's work related? What does it actually mean? And also it's good to give people a range of different options for how they can contribute in meetings or chats. So it's helpful if people know that there are options for putting their hands up in a meeting, or whether they are best using the chat window in a meeting, or whether it's okay for them just to interrupt and to say what they need to say within the meeting. So just have some guidelines around what's expected and what people prefer to do in those situations.
And our final tip today, it seems really simple, but it can make a massive difference. You know, just be kind to people, be respectful of the differences that are around us in the world, and just be nice to other people. You know, don't judge people on the way that they first present. So, yeah, if we can kind of follow all of these different tips and tricks, we can, you know, communicate more clearly and more inclusively with other people.
Yeah, so like Venus just said, hopefully if you're if you've picked up perhaps some of the tips, or if you aim to use some of them going forward in how you communicate with people, hopefully that will lead to a much more successful sort of working relationship with people.
We've got about 15 minutes left. So I was just thinking, if you're okay with it, Lucy, rather than kind of cutting it short, we could almost do a little bit of Q&A with people.
That's what I was thinking as well.
Yeah, and just being like really open. Like, I'd much rather someone ask a question if they're not sure about something than, like, you know, feeling scared to answer it almost.
Definitely. There's no such thing. I think I appreciate being asked questions. There's certainly no such thing as a silly question.
Yeah, and I want people to kind of feel like this is a bit of a safe space to ask us questions that you maybe wouldn't ask someone, you know, face to face. We're anonymous faces in a Zoom meeting, so
I
promise we won't be offended.
Yeah, I think if I don't get offended, I think if people type any questions they have into the webinar chat, or
I think there might be a Q&A window that's
or
available.
the Q&A window. Yeah, Chris, if you've got any questions coming through, it might be or it might be an experience that you'd like to share rather than a question that you want to ask us. So that would be interesting as well.
Feel free to just put anything in the Q&A. There's nothing there at the moment. Kind of open it up a bit too. You were saying about acknowledging people, maybe, you know, do not disturb mode on Teams, for example, Lucy and Rina. Do you find, or do you hear of many people actually adhering to that and using things like focus time to keep away from, not keep away from colleagues, but you know what I mean, to allow them to have their own space?
I think we do tend to see them at AbilityNet on our Slack team channel, and I know from the point of view, if I want to contact someone and I see they've set a status for a specific reason, I very much adhere to that, and then I know when I can contact them, and I always set my own up, even if I'm going for lunch, because I know that I find it useful the other way around, so that I'm not wondering why someone's not got back to me, or why there's been no response. Do you agree, Rina?
Yeah, I think we do respect them. I think there could be a bit more kind of definition around what they mean and when we can message people. So there's some things that I do because I do a lot of kind of quality assurance of people's work. So it may be that the person who needs to, you know, make some amendments maybe has a do not disturb status on. So it'd be really good for people to kind of agree on a definition, or for people to kind of share what they would prefer around that sort of thing. But definitely seeing those statuses does make me think, okay, right, this is not an urgent thing that needs to happen right now. And so I kind of hold off messaging about those sorts of things. I tend to find that it kind of works quite well. We use our statuses quite well, I think, in the Slack channels for sure.
Yeah, no, I've found personally, even just using that focus time now, which obviously inbuilt, but it's certainly helped me 100%. Julius Davison's asked a question on the chat, saying, are there any resources you recommend for communicating with neurodivergent individuals, especially when looking to recruit neurodivergent individual into an organization? Who wants to take that one?
I mean, I think it's quite a hard one because everyone is so different. I think picking up a bunch of the kind of the tips that we've communicated in here will help you go a really long way to making it more inclusive. You know, things like defining the tasks that they have to do within their interviews or within their recruitment process, like really clearly, will help people understand what they need to do. You know, defining your questions really clearly and making them specific is like a super useful thing as well. In terms of kind of resources, I think we might have a couple that we have on our website, but I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to look them up. But yeah, I think it's just being open to kind of listening to the person that you're talking to, and you know, accepting and kind of considering any reasonable adjustments that they ask for as well. What do you think, Lucy?
I echo what you say. Actually, I found thinking back to last year about having the list of questions beforehand, so that I had time to think through my answers rather than being put on the spot, to know what the format of the recruitment process was going to be, and things like time estimates of how long it was going to take between the different parts of the interview and recruitment process. And also being people that say, offering that we could take breaks if we needed to, or that sort of thing. Yeah, just being really clear, almost like the same idea of setting an agenda for a meeting. It's about allowing people to prepare in advance.
Yeah, for sure. Also being like really flexible on time of interview as well, because like some people are better in the morning, some people are better in the afternoon. All of those sorts of things can be like really great. Just knowing that they've got the option to choose may mean that they don't need to choose, if that makes sense. So like, for example, I will take a safe I drive everywhere, and my car's almost like my safe space, and having my car there to be my safe space if I need to escape means that I then don't need to do it. So just having that option there is like really useful.
Okay, I've just had a message come from Q&A to say that Amy's logged in with Melanie. So shall we offer Melanie an opportunity now to talk about her work in her own words?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Hey.
Hello, lovely to see you both. We have
you.
briefly introduced them.
I'll
Melanie, but
step
it will
away
be
and
great.
let Melanie crack on, because otherwise we're both going to be disappearing and appearing. So
Okay.
go ahead.
Yeah, Melanie, it would be great to hear in your own words now about the work that you do at Greenwich and with your the student ambassadors. So
Yeah,
we'll give you the floor.
thank you. Sorry, it has taken us an hour to get onto this call, so apologies. So yes, I'm Melanie. I manage something called START, which is a disability project at the University of Greenwich, which is in Kent and London. I'm very pleased to say that we are one of the few DPLOs, which is a disability people-led organisation, left in the UK. We are 100% disability, and we have various ways of doing things. Our main priority is to give impartial information, advice and guidance for disabled students considering university. So not just my university, but any university. So our role is to, as much as we can, ensure that disabled folk have as much information about university as possible, because we know the more prepared people are to stay at university, the more likely that they are to stay. I'm well aware that this is about inclusive communication, specifically on this session. So it's really difficult for me to focus and concentrate anyway, to be honest, but I will try to do my best. One of the main sort of things we're known for is our use of language. And one of the most impactful little changes that people can make is to not use the words declare or disclose around a disability. As I say to people, we're not trying to take drugs through an airport. We use the word share, so people can share the information if they have a disability, neurodivergent, dyslexic, mental health, that sort of thing. It gives the person more autonomy. And it's also something that has been adopted by UCAS. It took about 6 years of harassment by myself and some other organisations, but they have actually changed it on their form. And tiny little changes like that does give disabled folk more autonomy and things. It's very strange because I'm actually in person at the conference here, and it is a European conference, and I keep forgetting, and I need to remind myself not to shout at people when they say people with disabilities, because a lot of our colleagues here are from Canada and America and Europe, and the terminology is people with disabilities. So obviously I'm, social model through and through. And so I just keep wanting to shout, no, it's not, it's disabled people. But I have to keep remembering in Europe and stuff, it is people with disabilities. Try to avoid things like, we often have people at my university, it's their second or third attempt at university because they've gone somewhere else. They haven't been supported and it's ended horribly. So we don't use failure either. What we do talk about is if any of our students have been somewhere else first, we call that practicing before we got here. I'm running out of time, so I quickly want to say, along with being a DPLO, one of the last ones, as far as I know, my university is also unique in the UK in that we have our own sort of Diet Coke model of a disability. Everybody, well, probably most people here know about the social model and the affirmative model. And what we did is we had a huge collaboration amongst our disabled students, staff and graduates, 223, I think it was. And we created these principles of disability. So our tagline, if you like, is experts by experience. I'm sure lots of you have been told, oh, you'll feel a lot better if you don't eat cake, and other helpful sentiments. So I will be quiet in case there's like questions or something else. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Melanie. Are there any questions about that people would like to ask Melanie in the Q&A, Chris?
Nothing at all at the moment, but that could change in a second or two, I'd imagine.
I can't see any either, but I just wanted to kind of touch base on some of the things that Melanie said about. So I've literally just finished my university degree. I first started university at the University of Sheffield, and left after I think a month and a half or 2 months, and then I went to the University of Birmingham for a month and a half or 2 months. And then I started at the Open University, and have literally just finished my OU degree. So I think the number of people who kind of have multiple practices, as Melanie calls them, at university is quite common in kind of the disabled community. And finding something that works for you can be a little bit difficult because often mainstream stuff doesn't necessarily work the same way as it does for the people. So yeah.
I think I don't think it happens occasionally. I think it's rife. I think lots of universities make lots of noises about being inclusive as tick box exercise, which doesn't do our disabled community any good. I think also though, because of our principles, which somebody's kindly put in the chat, I did forget I'd actually done a blog with AbilityNet about this last year, so it's not new to me. Is this it starts from us within START. We do not have this deficit view of disabled folk. We don't see us, I'm a disabled person myself, don't see us as broken or particularly vulnerable, which is quite patronising. And there is this sway between sort of pity and pedestal type thing. There's no like disabled folks in the middle. I think really if you do look at the language of universities, that can be indicative of whether you're going to be needed. And one of the things that I say, it's not just about disability, it could also be about things like ethnicity and gender and everything. You need to find a university where people from your tribe are, if that makes sense. So the majority of people that I communicate with in my work life do tend to be inclusive. So on the intersectionality thing, because obviously, again, it's in our principles, you know, different shapes and sizes and colours and ages and genders, and all of that. It's really hard to be quiet, so I'll be quiet.
No, definitely resonates for sure. But I think this is supposed to be a 45-minute session. Am I right, Chris?
Very much so. So I was just about to say we're going to have to wrap up there for the 2 o'clock main stage event. So thank you to Melanie. It was great to hear from you there. So much appreciated. And thank you to Rina and to Lucy.